Epic like to change their loot pool constantly. It's something that doesn't happen as much in other competitive video games, but the debate remains whether there should be a set loot pool or whether the game would lose its charm if that happened. But here's my idea of a loot pool that would keep competitive fair and interesting. I'd like to lay out a few ground rules here before we get into the guns. Different items of the same type should be balanced. Make the players choose based on personal preferences and the rarities they find. Don't make it obvious. Secondly, don't have any weapons that are just discarded every single time. And lastly, no items that destroy another team's game. You can have items that buff your own chances of winning, but not items that the team you fight just has no reasonable counterplay against, thinking about perfect nades, double heavy snipers, etc. But isn't it difficult to balance weapons? I mean, when there's an OP item in comp, one of three things tend to happen. Either they get removed from comp, nerfed until they're unusable, or just not touched at all and left in the game for the rest of the season. It seems rare that an item is ever effectively brought into balance with everything else. I don't believe it's too difficult to balance weapons. On most weapons there are at least 6 metrics you can tweak. Damage, fire rate, clip size, reload speed, bloom, and recoil. Any of these can be used to balance them. But how would Epic know if something was not balanced or balanced? They could just look at Twitter. Nah, I'm joking. They should look at the tournament data. There are thousands of tournament matches played every week, each with 100 loadouts and hundreds of loadout decisions made. They could track the most popular weapons and the choices made, and easily see which items to nerf and buff. If the MK7 is used 8 times as much as the Ranger AR, which it probably is, then one needs nerfing, the other buffing, or a bit of both. After a few iterations over a couple of weeks, it should be at a decent place. Let's get on to the items that I think should be in comp Fortnite, and we're starting with shotguns. I would only go for 2 shotguns in the loot pool, one that hits hard and fires slow, and one that hits less and fires faster. We've seen guns that fire insanely fast like the drum shotgun, and we've seen others that are like sniper hybrids like the new heavy shotgun, but really there's no need for those because other weapon types should fill those roles. I believe that some of the most iconic shotguns from Fortnite history should be here. First we have the dream weapon of every OG box fighter, the classic pump shotgun. This comes with a twist. I do not believe that any competitive rarity should hit for 200. I know this ruins your montages, but let's be honest, we're trying for a good comp meta here, and a good box fighter and endgame player should not be relying on hitting one shot only. It's the perfect choice for box fight aficionados who can keep their distance or switch to an SMG quickly. After the small nerf that I'm suggesting, the pump will actually feel extremely similar to the Chapter 3 striker pump, so you could equally put that in instead. My second shotgun for the comp loot pool is the TAC shotgun. It provides a great counterpart to the pump as it fires at a faster rate but with less damage. When the pump and TAC were in comp together, the pump was taken by almost every player, but the suggested reduction to pump damage should balance them out nicely. Now let's talk about the weapon that strikes fear into keyboard players coming up against controller players, SMGs. Honestly, I don't care which SMG is in the game, because nerfing or buffing one makes it the same as another. So let's go with the original SMG because it was already fairly balanced when it last appeared at the end of Chapter 2. There's no need for more than one because they all do the same thing in the end, and the important thing is to find the right fire rate for it because it should be an optional weapon to support a shotgun, not a replacement for it. I'm going to go with 3 ARs for this loot pool. The classic AR of Chapter 1 and 2 worked well and didn't frustrate anybody. The problem it almost always had was that there was no challenger to it. There was a time when the heavy AR was used regularly, but in general the classic AR dominated. I would nerf the damage or fire rate of the purple and gold scars a little bit, but otherwise leave it as it was. I would actually choose the new Ranger AR rather than the heavy as the counterpart to the standard AR. It is basically like the old heavy AR, but should complement it nicely as a good weapon for surge tags or for accurate tap fire on people gliding. For the third weapon, I would add the scoped AR back into the game. A scoped weapon that isn't a sniper is going to be a real asset with the amount of surge you get in lobbies. And having 3 ARs also creates choice in a duos meta where you're realistically only going to carry 2 between you. Now for snipers, and I'm actually sad that they have taken a back seat for the moment. When balanced, they're a skilled weapon for surge tags, openings for fights, and to punish overpeaking. What I'm not sad about is that 200 damage snipers are gone. That's a change I've been wanting for a long time. I never thought it was fair, especially in solos, that one moment like that can end your game from 200 meters away. Now the bolt action sniper is perfect. There's no need for heavy snipers that help you jump in boxes or double snipe people, or for any fast firing snipers because we already have the scoped AR in the loot pool. Just keep the headshot damage below 200 and we're good. On to heals, where minis, bigs and medkits have always been a staple of Fortnite and they're all taken regularly throughout the game. I'd remove bandages because they've always been a lesser item, and now even more so with medmist in the game. I would keep the medmist to go alongside medkits as a health healer, and then nerf splashes to 4 in a stack and we're good to go with those. The shield kegs were a nice addition to the game for team modes and I'm happy with where they're at. But forget chug jugs and other weird stuff like that, there's just no need for that clutter. There's rarely been a fair and balanced mobility meta. The biggest problem is that it's too much luck whether you get the items or not, which then massively affects your chances from 5th zone onwards. Now launch pads have long been a staple of Fortnite, but they've always been too rare. If you don't get a launch pad, you're suddenly using 700 materials rotating for 50-50 zone and running out by second moving zone, at which point somebody who had 2 launch pads is only just starting to use their materials. Now one way to remove that luck factor is to make mobility items much more common. Ensure that almost every team has mobility and suddenly it's more down to skill than loot luck. I'm not sure that tripling launchpad spawns is a great way to do it though. Less powerful mobility items such as bouncers sounds much better to me, and make them common enough that you'll almost always get 3 if not 6 or more of them on your loot path. Effective use of them is more skillful than pads, and like pads they can also be reused by teams unlucky enough to be without. Another good mobility item was shockwave grenades, but don't get them confused with the impulse grenades which gave full damage. Now these nades required skill and also provided a risk factor when using them on more than one person at a time, making them a perfect, skillful item for team modes. Now this might be a controversial opinion, but Spider-Man has had some good effects on the game. The fact that they spawn outside the POIs has made all the split drops much more viable and helped to even out the loadouts of everyone in the game. Obviously at one point they had unlimited charges and were super powerful, but once they were nerfed to 10 they were actually fine, and the teams that won tournaments were generally not landing on Spider-Man. I suspect the deal with Marvel may end and we'll never see the item again, but the idea of having something special spawn outside POIs is a good one to me. For special utility items, the harpoon must be here. It is one of the most unique yet balanced items that's ever been in the game. It's always been an item that you can sometimes take and sometimes you don't. It doesn't ruin anyone else's game, yet regularly helps you if you carry one. There's just no way I can leave it out. The other fishing weapon is the fishing rods. They're fairly useless, just keep them in the barrels by the water and then we're all happy. Now for nades. Standard grenades, no thanks. Perfect nading ruined people's games with no effective counterplay too often, which breaks one of my golden rules. I don't think anybody is sad that they're not in comp at the moment. Stinks were also removed a long time ago for good reason, and other grenades were talked about in the mobility section where I suggested having shockwave grenades, so I don't think there's anything else extra to add here. For traps, I would keep armoured walls only. I think they were an excellent addition to the game as a proxy to a 4th material that is much stronger and much rarer than metal. There's really no need to bring back old school spike traps or any of the other weird and wonderful things that have been around. There are so many other minor items in comp, and most of them are just fine as they play a very small part. I'm talking cabbages, mushrooms, fireflies, gas cans, etc. I really don't care one way or another whether they're there or not, so let's just leave them in and be done with it. So what should actually be carried in the 5 slots if this was the loot pool? Well, I'd advocate for a meta where you'll always choose one of the shotguns. Remember, we want it balanced so that players make a choice based on personal preference and also which rarities of each they find, so it won't necessarily always be a pump. And then of course an AR is a staple of Fortnite and must also be carried, so you're looking at either the standard AR or the Ranger AR. Thirdly, you'll want at least one heal slot, and for the last 2 slots there should hopefully be plenty of choice. Often you would carry a second or even a third heal. Then there's the SMG, there's a sniper, there's a scoped AR, a harpoon or shockwave nades. We'd see a variety of loadouts, and duos would be able to coordinate between them to carry more useful things between them. What do you think? Do you agree with my opinions? Comment down below what you agree and disagree with, right after you like and subscribe of course. Thanks for watching, see you next time.